Monday, 6 tools in the morning. My cabin's peace shatters as the doorbell tolls like a funeral nail. Linda Robinson, HOA president, quivers in a wrinkled grey cardigan, thrusting a yellow notice like a declaration of war. Mr. Johnson, sell this sanctuary. In 48 hours, she snaps, voice fracturing with panic. I scan the urgent notice, no violations, just a forged signature screaming fraud. A grin creeps up Linda's, cross the wrong man. This cabin's my legacy, and I crush bullies like her. Tell me in the comments what you do with a scam like this. This fight's just begun. I was enjoying my peaceful morning when Linda Robinson arrived, handing me an ultimatum. My inherited cabin was my sanctuary until she decided. Otherwise, I examined the notice more carefully while Linda stands there fidgeting like she's got somewhere urgent to be. The document claims I am in serious violation of HOA regulations and must sell within 48 hours or face immediate legal action. But here's the thing about being a software engineer: we read documentation carefully. In this document, it's garbage code. No specific violations listed, no reference to which regulations I supposedly broke, and the signature looks like it was signed with a different pen than the rest of the text. Linda's watching me read, and I can see sweat beating on her forehead. Despite the cool mountain morning, Linda, I say, setting down the notice and giving her my best professional smile. This is interesting. Which specific regulation am I violating? She shifts from foot to foot, clutching her purse like it contains state secrets. It's all in the notice, Mark. Very serious violations. The HOA board voted unanimously. I nod thoughtfully. The board, huh? And when was this vote? Her eyes dart away. Last week. Emergency meeting. Look, I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. Something in her tone tells me she's lying through her teeth, but I keep my expression neutral after Linda leaves, practically sprinting to her beat-up Honda Civic. I do what any good engineer does when faced with the system error. I investigate. I call the HOA office. No violation reports for your property. Sarah says bingo. Linda's freelancing. I dig through HOA records and discover a clear pattern. Linda pressures homeowners with urgent violation notices, forcing them to sell below market price. The sales are linked to Linda's side business, but what's her angle and why target me specifically? My phone buzzes with a text from Eric Foster, who owns the hardware store down in town. Mark saw Linda leaving your place this morning. She looked agitated. Everything okay. Eric's a good guy, lived in Pine Ridge longer than anyone, and has his finger on the pulse of local drama. I text back, asking if he's got time to chat. And within 20 minutes, his pickup truck is rumbling up my driveway. Eric's one of those guys who knows everyone's business without being gossipy about it. A valuable trade in a small mountain community, Linda Robinson, Eric says, shaking his head as we sit on my deck with coffee. Has been trouble since day one. Did you know she forced the Hendersons to sell last month? Same playbook, urgent violations, threats of legal action, 48-hour deadline. He pulls out his phone and shows me a local news article I'd missed. Henderson family farm in their family for 3 generations, sold for 60% of market value. Linda somehow connected them with a buyer who paid cash immediately. The pieces start clicking together. This isn't about HOA violations, it's about money. Eric adds, Linda's broke her ex-husband, cut alimony and foreclosures knocking. Now we're getting somewhere. A desperate person with authority and a pattern of forcing distress sales. Linda's running a con game using the HOA as her weapon. But she made one crucial mistake. She picked a target who actually reads the fine print and knows how to fight back. As Eric drives away, I notice Linda's Honda is parked at the end of my street, engine running. She's watching my house through binoculars. Amateur hour, I grab my phone and start recording video through my window. If Linda wants to play games, I'll document every move she makes. But first, I need to understand the rules of engagement time to call my college buddy, Matt Cooper, who happens to be the best real estate lawyer in 3 counties. Matt and I go way back to our fraternity days, and he owes me a favor from when I helped him land his first job at a law school. Mark, how's mountain life treating you? Matt's voice booms through the phone. After I explain the situation, his tone gets serious. Send me everything. You have photos of the notice documentation of your property records. Anything Linda gave you, this sounds like harassment using HOA authority, which is illegal. In Colorado, we might have grounds for a countersuit if she keeps pushing. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Linda thinks she's playing chess, but she doesn't realize I've already moved my pieces into position for checkmate 24 hours into Linda's 48-hour ultimatum, and I'm deep in research mode, coffee's brewing, laptops humming, and I'm treating this like the most important debugging session of my career, because that's exactly what this is, debugging Linda Robinson's scam operation. I dig into Pioneer Ridge HOA's records, my screen glowing with property deeds that scream fraud. Linda's name is everywhere, linked to every forced sale, her real estate side hustle, profiting off misery. My screen flashes with proof. Every forced sale funnels through Linda's Robinson Real Estate Services, her scam empire. Then my phone buzzes. Linda's texting threats demanding I stop digging. She's not just abusing HOA authority, she's profiting directly from the forced sales. My phone rings, interrupting my investigation. Mr. Johnson, this is Jennifer from Mile High Bank. We're calling about your mortgage account. I don't have a mortgage. I own the cabin outright. I think you have the wrong number, I say, but Jennifer continues. We show a mortgage application was submitted yesterday for your property on Aspen Trail. We wanted to verify. The application details. My blood runs cold. Linda's not just harassing me, she's actively trying to fraudulently mortgage my property. I asked Jennifer to email me the application details and flag the account for fraud investigation. Immediately, the fraudulent mortgage application has Linda's fingerprints all over it. Someone forged my signature on documents claiming I need emergency financing to pay HOA fines and legal fees. The requested loan amount $90,000, exactly what Linda needs to save her own house from foreclosure. She's not just stealing my property, she's using it as collateral for her own financial rescue. This woman has balls, I'll give her that, but she clearly doesn't understand what happens when you mess with someone who makes a living solving complex problems. Eric shows up around noon with sandwiches and more intel. I did some digging of my own, he says, settling into my deck chair with the satisfied look of someone who loves a good mystery. Talk to my buddy at the county assessor's office. Turns out Linda's been very busy lately. She's requested property records for 12 different homes in our area over the past 6 months. Guess which properties? Every single one that received violation notices. We spread out the documents on my table, and the scope of Linda's operation becomes clear. Here's the really interesting part, Eric continues. Pulling out a manila folder, Linda's been attending city planning meetings where they discuss new development projects. There's a resort company that wants to build a luxury mountain retreat, and they're buying up properties in our area, want to guess who's been feeding them information about available properties. The pieces click together like lines of code, finally compiling correctly. Linda isn't just running random scams, she's systematically targeting properties that a developer wants. forcing residents to sell cheap, then facilitating sales to the development company for significant markups around 2p. Linda makes her first retaliatory move. A certified letter arrives with new violation notices. 5 of them apparently I'm now guilty of unauthorized paint color variation because my cabin's brown stain is 2 shades darker than approved earth. Tones, I'm also violating proper parking protocols because my truck is parked 3 and closer to the street than regulations allow. The noise violation is my favorite. I'm disturbing the peace with excessive typing sounds during quiet hours between 7 m and 7 a.m. The woman is creative, I'll give her that. But Linda's creativity reveals her desperation. Each violation notice demands immediate payment of fines totaling $200 with a payment deadline of 24 hours. She's escalating the pressure, hoping I'll cave and accept her original offer to help me sell quickly to avoid further legal complications. What she doesn't realize is that every fraudulent violation notice she sends me is evidence for the case I'm building against her. Keep digging that hole, Linda, I'm here for it. Matt calls Linda's violation notices break 3 Colorado statutes. The fraudulent mortgage application is felony fraud. What's worse, she hasn't held a single official board meeting in 8 months to issue violation notices. The HOA board needs to vote on them in an official meeting with recorded minutes. She's been operating as a one-woman show, issuing violations without any legitimate authority. Evening brings Linda's next escalation. My power gets cut at exactly 6 p.m. I'm right in the middle of a video call with a client. The utility company claims it's emergency maintenance, but Eric drives by an hour later and reports that every other house on the street has power. Linda's getting desperate, which means she's dangerous. Desperate people make mistakes, but they also take bigger risks. I set up my laptop on battery power and start documenting everything. If Linda wants to play hardball, she's about to learn why you don't mess with someone who thinks systematically for a living. I call the utility company's emergency line and speak to a supervisor named Carlos. Sir, we show no scheduled maintenance for your area. If your power's been cut, someone called in a false emergency report. We can have a crew out tomorrow morning to investigate. Perfect. Another piece of evidence for Linda's growing legal troubles. I also call the county sheriff's non-emergency line to report the fraudulent utility call. Deputy Morrison takes my statement and informs me that making false emergency reports is a misdemeanor in Colorado. As I sit in my darkened cabin laptop screen, illuminating my face, I realize Linda's made a crucial tactical error. She's escalated from harassment to actual criminal activity: fraud, false emergency reports, and illegal interference with utility services. What started as a civil dispute has become a criminal matter, but more importantly, her power play has given me leverage I didn't have before. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to start my counterattack, and Linda Robinson has no idea what's about to hit her. The emergency HOA meeting Linda called for Wednesday evening is standing room only. Word travels fast in a small mountain community, especially when someone's been abusing their authority. I arrive 30 minutes early with my laptop, a portable projector I borrowed from Eric, and a folder full of evidence that's about to turn Linda's world upside down. The community center buzzes with tension as residents whisper about serious HOA violations. Linda's absence speaks volume. Eric waves me over to the front row where he's saved seats for both of us and Matt, who drove up from Denver specifically for tonight's show. You ready for this? Eric asks, but I can tell from his grin that he's more excited than nervous. Matt reviews his notes one final time. Remember, stick to facts, stay calm, and let Linda dig her own grave. Desperate people always overplay their hand as residents file in. I recognize faces from around the community: the Hendersons, who sold their farm, the Martinez family, who fought their violation notices, and several others who've probably dealt with Linda's harassment. Linda finally arrives at exactly 700 p.m., flanked by two people I don't recognize: a woman in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase and a man with the unmistakable look of someone who gets paid to intimidate people. She's brought reinforcements, which tells me she knows tonight isn't going to go her way. Linda takes her position at the front table, adjusts the microphone, and begins with her prepared speech about serious violations threatening our community standards. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife. Thank you all for coming to this emergency meeting. Linda begins her voice, projecting false confidence. We're here to address ongoing violations by certain residents who refuse to comply with our community standards. These violations threaten property values and our quality of life. She launches into a detailed description of my alleged violations, making them sound like I'm running a meth lab instead of typing on a laptop. The performance is actually impressive. Linda's clearly practiced this speech, but she's about to learn that preparation only matters if you're prepared for the right battle. I stood plugged in my projector and presented the facts. The room fell silent as I exposed Linda's manipulation of the HOA regulations. On the left, you'll see the original paint color regulation. Paint colors should complement the natural mountain environment. On the right, Linda's version. Paint must be approved Alpine Brown number 47B. Only interesting how Alpine Brown 47B happens to be the exact color. Linda demanded I change my cabin to match. Linda's face flushes red as murmurs ripple through the crowd. That's a legitimate clarification of existing standards, she stammers. But I'm already advancing to my next slide. This one shows a timeline of every violation notice issued. During Linda's tenure, cross-reference with property sales, in our community, 7 violation notices in 8 months, resulting in 4 forced sales. At below-market prices, notice the pattern: every family that sold quickly had their violations disappear. Immediately after closing, families that fought back found their violations mysteriously resolved without explanation. The woman in the expensive suit, clearly Linda's lawyer, tries to interrupt, but the crowd is having none of it. Tom Martinez, whose family received violation notices for excessive garden gnomes, stands up. Linda told us we had to remove our decorations or face legal action. But the Hendersons had the same gnomes, and Linda never said a word to them until they refused to sell. Other residents start sharing their own experiences: parking violations that weren't violations, noise complaints about children playing during daylight hours, and arbitrary rule changes that seem designed to target specific families. My final slide is the kill shot copies of the fraudulent mortgage application Linda submitted using my forged signature yesterday. Linda attempted to fraudulently mortgage my property for $90,000 without my knowledge or consent. The requested amount exactly matches her own mortgage debt. Currently in foreclosure proceedings, the room explodes in angry voices as residents realize the full scope of Linda's operation. She's not just harassing people, she's actively stealing from them. Linda tries to regain control, banging her gavel and demanding order, but the community has heard enough. This meeting is adjourned, she shouts, but Eric stands up from the front row. Actually, Linda, according to HOA bylaws, you can't adjourn a meeting unilaterally when residents are presenting evidence of misconduct. I motion for a vote of no confidence. The room erupts in shouts of second and vote now. Linda's lawyer whispers urgently in her ear, "Probably. explaining that her authority as HOA president doesn't extend to suppressing evidence of her own crimes as chaos erupts around us. Linda makes a desperate move. She grabs the microphone and plays her final card. If you don't stop this witch hunt, immediately I'll have no choice but to cut essential services to this community, the road maintenance, the utility easements, the shared property upkeep. All of it depends on HOA cooperation. The threat hangs in the air for about 3 seconds before I deliver my knockout punch. Linda, about those shared services, I have some interesting news about the road maintenance fees you've been collecting. I connect my laptop to the projector and display my final piece of evidence. A map showing property boundaries for our entire community. This is a survey map from the county assessor's office. Notice anything interesting about the main access road. The red line clearly shows that the primary road into Pine Ridge community runs entirely through my property. Linda's been charging every resident $500 monthly for road maintenance fees, total collected over $180,000 over 6 years. But here's the fun part. She's been collecting fees for maintaining a road that sits entirely on my private property, which means Linda owes me 6 years of back rent. At current market rates, that's $72,000 due immediately. The room goes silent as residents process this information. Linda's face cycles through confusion, realization, and pure panic. In about 5 seconds, her lawyer grabs her arm and starts pulling her toward the exit. But I'm not done yet, Linda, since you're so concerned. About community standards, I'm implementing new guidelines for road usage. Effective immediately, your monthly access fee is $1.500, triple your current rate, and you'll need to pay all back rent in full before I grant continued access privileges. Game set, match. The morning after the HOA meeting, I wake up to find Linda's Honda parked across from my driveway, engine running. With Linda inside talking animatedly on her phone, she's been there for over an hour, based on the frost patterns on her windshield. Amateur surveillance at its finest. I pour my coffee, wave cheerfully from my kitchen window, and watch her nearly drop her phone in surprise. If Linda wants to play games, I'm happy to oblige, but she's clearly outmatched in the strategy department. Time to press my advantage while she's still reeling from last night's public humiliation. My phone starts ringing. Before I finish my first cup of coffee, the caller ID shows numbers I don't recognize, but the voicemails tell an interesting story. 3 different residents want to know more about the road maintenance fees Linda's been collecting. 2 others ask about joining a potential class action lawsuit against the HOA. Most interesting is a call from someone identifying himself as a reporter from the Denver Post who heard about last night's meeting and wants to discuss HOA abuse in mountain communities. Linda's little empire is starting to crumble, and the vultures are circling around 10 a.m. A county sheriff's vehicle pulls into my driveway. Deputy Morrison steps out, and I meet him on my front porch. Mr. Johnson, we need to discuss the fraud complaint you filed yesterday. I've been investigating, and we've discovered some concerning information about Linda Robinson's activities. He shows me a tablet with bank records that make my jaw drop. Miss Robinson has been depositing HOA road maintenance fees into her personal account for the past 18 months. Total amount $96,000. That's felony embezzlement under Colorado law. But the deputy has more surprises. We also discovered that Linda's been filing false police reports about several residents in your community, noise complaints, suspicious activity reports, even a claim that someone was operating an illegal business from their home. All of these reports were filed against people who later received HOA violation. Notices the scope of Linda's operation is breathtaking. She's been using law enforcement as another weapon in her harassment campaign, wasting taxpayer resources to support her private scam operation. The deputy continues, "We're preparing arrest. Warrants for embezzlement and filing false reports, but I wanted to give you a heads up about something else. Linda's been claiming that you threatened her with physical violence. She's trying to get a restraining order that would prevent you from attending HOA meetings or accessing community property." I almost laugh out loud. Linda's so desperate that she's now trying to get the legal system to ban me from exposing her crime. Morrison, I hope you'll note that I've recorded every interaction I've had with Linda. I'd be happy to provide those recordings for your investigation after the deputy leaves. I decide it's time to take a closer look at those property records. I drive to the county assessor's office in town and spend 3 hours poring over surveys, deeds, and boundary maps. What I discover is even better than I hoped. Not only does the main access road run entirely through my property, but the community shared parking area, the mailbox cluster, and even the small park area with picnic tables are all built on land that belongs to me. Linda hasn't just been collecting road maintenance fees for my property. She's been charging people to use facilities built entirely on my land. The numbers are staggering when I calculate them properly. 32 families in Pine Ridge community, each paying $500 monthly for shared services that are entirely located on my property. That's $16,000 per month, or $192,000 per year. Over 6 years, Linda has collected over $1 million in fees for services provided on my land without ever paying me a penny. The woman hasn't just been running a scam, she's been operating an illegal business using my property as her base of operations. I call Matt immediately to share the discovery mark. This is beyond anything I expected. Linda's not just guilty of embezzlement, she's guilty of operating an unauthorized commercial enterprise on private property. In Colorado, that's grounds for both criminal charges and civil damages. You could sue for back rent, lost income, and punitive damages. We're talking about potentially millions of dollars. The irony is delicious. Linda tried to force me to sell my property to solve her financial problems, and instead she's handed me legal grounds to solve my financial future. But the best discovery comes when I dig deeper into the property records. The original survey from 1987 shows that when my grandfather built the cabin, he actually owned 12 acres, not the 8 acres I thought I inherited. The missing 4 acres, they include the entire Pine Ridge Community Center, the shared recreational facilities, and Linda's own house, somehow during the HOA formation process in 1992, those 4 acres were illegally transferred to community ownership without proper compensation to my grandfather. I spend the rest of the afternoon documenting everything with photographs, surveys, and legal descriptions. By evening, I have a complete case file that would make any prosecutor salivate. Linda Robinson hasn't just been running a harassment campaign, she's been operating an illegal commercial enterprise on stolen land. The property she's been using as collateral for her own mortgage doesn't actually belong to the HOA, it belongs to me, and it has for the past 37 years. As the sun set, I spotted smoke rising from the community center. Eric's call confirmed my suspicion. Linda had set fire to the office, but I wasn't worried. I had already documented everything. The scene at the community center is surreal. Fire trucks, sheriff's vehicles, and half the community standing around watching the HOA office burn. Linda's nowhere to be seen, but her absence is more damning than her presence would have been. Deputy Morrison spots me in the crowd and walks over. Convenient timing for a fire, don't you think? Especially since the only thing that burned was the HOA financial records. I nod thoughtfully. Deputy, I hope you'll note that I've been photographing and copying all relevant documents for the past week the fire didn't destroy any evidence that matters as we watch the fire department finish their work. Eric joins us with a grim expression mark. I hate to add to tonight's drama, but I just got off the phone with my cousin who works at the bank. Linda cleaned out the remaining HOA accounts this afternoon. Every penny she withdrew, $43, zero in cash, and closed the accounts completely. The woman is going full scorched earth, trying to destroy evidence and steal whatever money she can before her inevitable arrest. But Linda's made one crucial mistake. She's escalated from civil fraud to felony arson and grand theft tomorrow. When the county prosecutor sees my evidence file, Linda Robinson's criminal nightmare is going to become very real. Thursday morning brings a parade of official vehicles to Pine Ridge Community Sheriff's. Cars, fire investigators, and what looks like half the county prosecutor's office descend on our little mountain enclave like a bureaucratic invasion force. I watch from my deck with coffee and a sense of satisfaction as investigators photograph the burned HOA office interview residents and generally treat the area like the crime scene. It's become Linda's nowhere to be seen. But Eric reports that her house appears empty and her car has been gone since yesterday evening. Deputy Morrison arrives at my cabin around 9 a.m. with a woman in a dark suit who introduces herself as Assistant District Attorney Sarah Brooks. Mr. Johnson, we'd like to review the evidence you've compiled regarding Linda Robinson's activities based on our preliminary investigation. We're preparing multiple felony charges and your documentation could be crucial for prosecution. I invite them inside and spread my entire evidence collection across the dining table: photographs, bank records, property, surveys, recorded conversations, and the timeline of Linda's harassment campaign. Ada Brooks reviews everything methodically, occasionally asking clarifying questions or requesting additional details. After an hour, she looks up with the expressions of someone who's just opened a Christmas present. Mr. Johnson, this is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've seen in 15 years of prosecution. Linda Robinson is looking at charges for embezzlement, fraud, arson filing, false police reports, and unauthorized use of private property. We're talking about potential prison time of 20 to 30 years. The number hits me like a freight train. Linda's desperate attempts to save her house have destroyed her entire life. Ada Brooks reveals Linda's being paid $60,000 by a resort developer to force sales. A multi-state scheme. The scope of Linda's operation is staggering. She wasn't just a desperate woman making bad choices. She was part of a coordinated scheme to defraud homeowners around noon. Eric shows up with news that's both shocking and predictable. Mark, Linda's been arrested. State police found her at Denver International Airport trying to board a flight to Mexico with $43, zero in cash, and a fake passport. She's being held without bail on multiple felony charges. The woman actually tried to flee the country rather than face the consequences of her actions. Part of me feels sorry for her. Desperation can make people do incredibly stupid things, but she chose to victimize innocent families instead of asking for help. The afternoon brings an unexpected visitor. Tom Henderson, whose family farm was one of Linda's early victims, drives up with his wife Martha and a folder full of documents. Mark, we heard about Linda's arrest on the news. We wanted to thank you for exposing what she did to us and other families. Tom explains that they're organizing a victims group to pursue civil litigation against Linda, the resort development company, and anyone else involved in the scheme. Our lawyer says we might be able to recover damages and maybe even get our farm back if we can prove the sale was fraudulent. Martha Henderson hands me a newspaper clipping that makes my blood boil. It's an article from the Denver Business Journal dated 6 months ago, titled Mountain Resort Developer Streamlines Property Acquisition Process. The article features a quote from Linda Robinson, described as a local community leader who helps identify prime development opportunity. She's been bragging about her scam operation to the business press, presenting herself as a legitimate real estate consultant rather than a con artist who destroys families. But the biggest surprise comes when Ada Brooks calls with an update on the investigation. Mr. Johnson, we've discovered something interesting about your property situation. During the 1992 HOA formation, someone forged your grandfather's signature on documents transferring 4 acres to community ownership. We have handwriting analysis that proves the signature is fake, which means that transfer was illegal from the beginning. She pauses to let that sink in. You're not just entitled to back rent for unauthorized use of your property, you're entitled to ownership of every structure built on those 4 acres. Over the past 31 years, the legal implications are mind-boggling. If I own the land that the community centre shared, facilities and several houses are built on, then every property owner in Pinner Ridge has been living in a legal grey area for 3 decades. But Ada Brooks explains that Colorado law protects good faith property owners who purchase with clean title, so current residents won't lose their homes. Instead, the legal system will likely require the HOA or insurance companies to compensate me for the unauthorized use of my property while protecting current homeowners, Matt calls with a bombshell mountain. Vista's a shell company exposed by the FBI, my fights now, crushing a multi-state scam, giving families like the Hendersons their lives back. As I sit on my deck watching the sunset over Pinner Ridge Mountain, I realize that Linda's desperate attempt to steal my property has uncovered a criminal conspiracy that's been victimizing families across multiple states. Her greed and panic have led to the exposure of a much larger fraud operation tomorrow, when the full scope of the investigation becomes public. Linda Robinson will be remembered not as the woman who tried to steal one cabin, but as the person whose incompetence brought down an entire criminal enterprise. My phone buzzes with a text from Eric. Mark saw on the news that Linda's been charged with 18 felonies, and the FBI is calling it the largest HOA fraud case in Colorado history. Also, the community wants to throw you a party this weekend. You're officially our hero. I text back that I'll bring beer and we can celebrate justice being served. But honestly, the best part isn't the vindication or the potential financial compensation. It's knowing that Linda Robinson will never again have the power to terrorize families or steal their homes. Sometimes the system actually works, and the bad guys really do get what they deserve. 2 weeks after Linda's arrest, I receive a certified letter that makes me question whether she's learned anything from her spectacular downfall. The letter, sent from Denver County Jail through her court-appointed attorney, contains an offer to settle all disputes amicably in exchange for my agreement not to pursue civil damages against her. The proposed settlement: Linda will pay me $5,000 and issue a public apology if I agree to drop all claims related to unauthorized use of my property. The woman is facing 30 years in prison and still thinks she can negotiate her way out of paying fair compensation. Matt laughed. Linda's lawyer is either clueless or desperate. She owes you over $1 million, but is offering $5,000. We both agree that Linda's offer deserves a response that's professional, but leaves no doubt about how seriously we take her proposal. The community has rallied around me in ways that feel both gratifying and overwhelming. Tom and Martha Henderson organized a legal defense fund to help with attorney fees, even though I don't need financial assistance. Eric started a petition demanding that the county investigate every HOA in the region to prevent future fraud. Most touching is a handwritten letter from the Martinez family's 8-year-old daughter, thanking me for making the mean lady stop being mean to people. Sometimes justice feels abstract, but getting thanked by a kid makes it very real. Ada Brooks calls with an update that changes the entire landscape of Linda's case, Mr. Johnson. Linda's attorney has approached us about a plea deal she's willing to testify against Mountain Vista Development and provide evidence about the multi-state fraud operation in exchange for reduced charges. The offer puts Linda in an interesting position. She can cooperate with law enforcement and potentially serve 5 to 10 years instead of 20 to 30, but she'll have to admit guilt to crimes that expose her to massive civil liability from dozens of victims. But Linda's legal troubles are just beginning. The FBI's investigation into Mountain Vista Development has uncovered evidence that Linda's operation was part of a much larger conspiracy. According to Ada Brooks, similar schemes have been running in mountain communities across Colorado, Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, all coordinated through shell companies controlled by the same criminal organization. Linda thought she was running a small-time scam to save her house, but she was actually a low-level operative in a sophisticated real estate fraud network. The most satisfying development comes when Eric brings me a copy of the local newspaper featuring Linda's mug shot on the front page under the headline, "Local HOA President Charged in $1 Million Fraud Scheme." The article details every aspect of Linda's crimes, from the forged violation notices to the fraudulent mortgage applications to her attempted flight to Mexico. But my favorite part is the quote from one of her former neighbors. Linda always acted like she was doing everyone a favor by enforcing HOA rules. Turns out she was robbing us blind while pretending to protect our property values. 3 weeks after her arrest, I faced Linda in court, her eyes hollow as she pleads guilty, knowing her empire of lies has collapsed. The motion also claims that my evidence was obtained through unauthorized surveillance of Linda's activities. It's a Hail Mary legal strategy that's both pathetic and insulting, but it gives me an opportunity to demonstrate just how thoroughly I've documented everything. Matt and I respond to Linda's motion with a comprehensive filing that includes 37 pages of evidence witness statements from 14 community members, bank records showing Linda's embezzlement, and video footage of her attempting to break into my property. We also include a detailed timeline showing that Linda initiated every escalation in our conflict, always in direct response to my legitimate questions about her authority and method. The judge reviews everything and dismisses Linda's motion within 48 hours, calling it frivolous and without merit. The final confrontation comes during Linda's plea hearing, which I attend as both a victim and a witness. Linda looks dramatically different from the confident woman who showed up at my door with fake violation notices. She's lost weight. Her hair is unkempt, and she has the defeated posture of someone who's realized that consequences are real. When the judge asks if she understands the charges against her, Linda's voice is barely audible as she pleads guilty to 12 felony count during the victim impact portion of the hearing. I get to address Linda directly for the first time since her arrest. "Linda, when you came to my door demanding that I sell my home, you weren't just trying to steal my property. You were trying to destroy the legacy my grandfather left me. The security I've built through years of hard work and the peace I found in this mountain community." But your actions revealed something important, that people will stand together against bullies and thieves, and that justice still matters in America. Linda's sentencing is scheduled for next month, but the plea agreement means she'll serve 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. She'll also be required to pay full restitution to all victims, which in my case amounts to $1.44 million, including interest and legal fees. Linda's house Cars and remaining assets will be sold to partially cover what she owes, but she'll be making monthly payments for the rest of her life. As I leave the courthouse, Martha Henderson catches up with me in the parking lot. "Mark, I wanted you to know that we got our farm back. The judge ruled that our sale was fraudulent and void, so we're moving home next month." She pauses and wipes away tears. "Linda robbed us of a year of our lives, but she couldn't steal our future. Thank you for fighting when the rest of us were too scared or too beaten down to stand up for ourselves." While walking to my truck, I realized that Linda's attempt to destroy my life actually gave me the opportunity to help rebuild other people's lives, sometimes the best. Revenge really is living well. 6 months after Linda's sentencing, Pine Ridge has transformed. The community center is rebuilt. Eric Foster is the new HOA president, and financial oversight is now a priority. Most importantly, every family that Linda forced to sell their homes has either moved back or received full compensation for their losses. The Hendersons are back on their farm. The Martinez family has their garden gnomes proudly displayed, and life in Pine Ridge feels like what mountain community living should be. I'm sitting on my deck on a crisp October morning, watching Tom Henderson work in the vegetable garden behind his restored farmhouse, when my phone rings with a number I don't recognize. "Mr. Johnson, this is Patricia Williams from Sunset Valley HOA in Utah. We're dealing with a situation similar to what you experienced in Colorado, and we were hoping you might have some advice." The caller explains that their HOA president has been issuing questionable violation notices and pressuring residents to sell their homes at below-market prices. The pattern sounds eerily familiar. In the past 6 months, I've received dozens of calls from HOA members across the West facing similar issues. My fight against Linda has turned into a nationwide effort to combat HOA abuse. Matt Cooper has started specializing in HOA fraud cases, and Eric has become a sought-after consultant for communities trying to implement transparent governance. The financial resolution of my case with Linda exceeded everyone's expectations. The sale of her assets covered about $200,000 of what she owed me, and the court-ordered garnishment of her future income will provide monthly payments for the next 25 years. But the real windfall came from the FBI's investigation into Mountain Vista Development. The criminal organization behind the multi-state fraud scheme had assets seized totaling over $40 million, and victims like me will receive substantial compensation from the Federal Rest Fund. Linda herself has become something of a cautionary tale. In legal circles, her case is now taught in law schools as an example of how small-scale fraud can escalate into federal racketeering charges when it's part of a larger criminal enterprise. She's serving her time at a minimum security federal prison in Colorado, and according to news reports, she's been working in the prison library helping other inmates. With legal research, perhaps she's finally found a constructive way to use her attention to detail. The most unexpected development has been my relationship with the Henderson family. Tom and Martha have become close friends, and their granddaughter Emma treats my cabin like her second home. Emma's the 8-year-old who wrote me the thank you letter, and she's appointed herself as my unofficial tour guide for visitors who want to hear the story of how we defeated Lindo Robinson. Her version of events involves more dramatic confrontations and heroic speeches than actually happened, but she tells it with such enthusiasm that I don't have the heart to correct her. This morning's call from Patricia Williams in Utah represents the 15th request for help I've received this month. Each case has unique details, but the patterns are remarkably consistent: desperate or greedy. HOA board members abusing their authority to force property sales, usually in cooperation with outside real estate interests. The Linda Robinson playbook apparently wasn't original. It was just one variation on a common theme that's been playing out in communities across America for years, I spend an hour walking Patricia through the documentation strategies that proved crucial in building my case against Linda. The key is treating it like a research project. I explain, document everything. Keep copies of every communication and never assume that HOA board members are acting within their legitimate authority. Most importantly, don't fight alone, build coalitions with your neighbors because individual homeowners have limited power, but organized communities can move mountains. After hanging up with Patricia, I realized that Linda's attack on my property has given my life a purpose I never expected before her 48-hour ultimatum. I was just a software engineer living quietly in my grandfather's cabin. Now I'm part of a growing movement of homeowners who refuse to be victimized by corrupt HOA officials. Linda thought she was targeting an isolated victim who would be too intimidated to fight back. Instead, she picked on someone with the skills, resources, and stubborn streak necessary to expose an entire criminal network. The irony of Linda's situation isn't lost on me. She tried to force me to sell my cabin to solve her financial problems, and instead her criminal actions generated enough legal damages to secure my financial future for life. The restitution payments from her case, combined with compensation from the federal seizure of Mountain Vista Development's assets, mean I'll never need to worry about money again. Linda's greed destroyed her life, while accidentally solving my retirement planning. Eric stops by around lunchtime with a bottle of beer and a grin that usually means he's got interesting news. Mark, I just got off the phone with a reporter from 60 Minutes. They want to do a segment about HOA fraud, and they want a film here in Pine Ridge. Apparently our case has become the poster child for everything wrong with unregulated homeowner associations. The idea of national television coverage is both exciting and terrifying, but Eric points out that publicity might help other communities recognize and fight similar fraud schemes as the sun sets over Pine Ridge Mountain, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that never get old. I reflect on how dramatically my life has changed in 1 year. Linda Robinson's desperate attempt to steal my home led to her imprisonment, the exposure of a multi-state criminal conspiracy, the recovery of millions of dollars in stolen assets, and the creation of a support network for HOA fraud victims across the country. She gave me 48 hours to sell my cabin. Instead, I tripled her rent and made her pay in full. But the real victory isn't financial, it's knowing that families like the Hendersons got their homes back, and communities like Pine Ridge learned that ordinary people can stand up to bullies. And when my phone buzzes with a text from Patricia Williams in Utah, Mark, we followed your advice and found evidence of embezzlement. Our HOA president just resigned, and we're filing criminal charges tomorrow. Thank you for showing us that fighting back is possible. I smile and type back, congratulations. Sometimes the best revenge is making sure the next family doesn't have to go through what you did. Linda Robinson thought she could destroy my life to save her own. Instead, she taught me that protecting your community